You have a Lamborghini to use, drive wherever you want, and like,
Yeah.
not really my style, man.
Hey, Scott, I'm super excited to be talking to you today. Thanks so much for being on the call.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Yeah, no worries. So I know you through our mutual friend, Dan Lowe. And the first thing I want to do actually is just to apologize. We said it was going to be 9 p.m. Toronto time. This is where I'm from. He asked me if it was okay if we bumped it up to 9. I said, sure. And you were okay with 9. And then he forgot to tell me that we were going to do it at 9. So I was ready at 9. He was still sleeping. So I completely blame my producer.
I think we can agree that pretty much everything's going to be his fault.
Thanks. And that's the way the show works, by the way. Anytime there's a problem, there's a technical difficulty, we say it's Dan.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
So the first thing I found out when I did a little bit of research on you is one of your most famous and one of my favorite shots of all time, the Marc Marquez shot from 2013. To the casual fan, when I showed it to my wife, and she's like, "Oh yeah, cool, nice shot," and then she kind of walked away, and I go, "Wait, look at the wheels." So maybe you can tell me a little bit about that, how you got that, how you prepped for it. Was it one of those 1 in a million shots, or did you spend a lot of time taking shots like that to get that final picture?
That was one that was a lot of preparation, trial and error, and then in the end, a lot of luck as well. Some of the pictures, that I think are some of my best are largely luck, but that is one where I had learned that this might be going on. And so I went out and spent track time to try to figure out if it was something that I could capture in a picture. Took a bunch of test shots, used valuable, premier class track time to try to identify where I would stand and where it was happening. And then went back and looked at those pictures to see if it was something that might work. And then went back during the race on Sunday and spent part of the race there shooting all the bikes as they came through, and got lucky with one bike clear and focus in the air, and it turned out to be Marc Marquez, the winner of the race, first rookie, etc. He set a bunch of records that season, and so it was a lot of preparation, but also just getting really lucky at the end too.
Yeah, if you look at like someone super famous back in the day, like Ansel Adams, he claimed that 60% of his time was spent, in the dark room, in post-processing. How much is your photographs or your photographs, pre-planned, where you have a vision in your mind of how you want that to look, versus going, I got the shot, but man, I wish it had just moved over a smidge, and now I got to do a lot of post-processing. How much of that is work?
Well, he's a famous example of that. And I think that 60% is probably, a little on the low side. I certainly feel like I spend a lot more time editing pictures than I do actually taking the pictures. Because in MotoGP, the track sessions are pretty short. So you're out there a couple times a day for less than an hour each time usually. And then there are hours and hours in the media center or back at the hotel going through all the pictures. So that's largely a function of how many pictures we take now with digital cameras. So that number of 60%, did he mean that per exposure? I don't know. I certainly don't spend 60% of my time per picture, but just overall, I spend a lot more time editing pictures than I do taking pictures because I take so many. On a race weekend, I probably take between 2,000 and 3,000 pictures. Try to come up with, 120, 150 good pictures to put on my website as a representation of that weekend. Just in terms of working on individual pictures, I don't want to spend more than a minute or two editing each individual one. But that's just a general guideline. There are pictures that I've spent hours and hours working on because of something that happened when I took the picture. I mean, the most common problem that takes a long time is if there are a lot of dust spots to remove on the image. If there's something compelling about the shot and I really want to use it, but there are 100 dust spots or 150 dust spots, and some of them are quick removal and some of them can be really tricky removal. Sometimes you can spend 5 or 10 minutes removing one dust spot to get it so that you can't tell that it was there. If it lands right in between two different tones and there's no quick area to clone to replace those pixels with, that can really be a pain in the neck. And then if you have 20 of those instances, but the picture's good enough and you want to use it. So there are some where I've spent hours and hours on. In general, just try to do, a minute or two on each one.
Yeah, I genuinely enjoy looking at your photos. I enjoy your website very much. Must have spent at least a good 15 minutes going through all your pictures. Other than motorcycle photography, is there any other type of photography that gets you all excited? I'll give you an example. I used to be a wedding photographer, and I completely understand where you're going with, it takes minutes, if not hours, making that one picture perfect. I mean, I'll give you an example. I did one wedding shot where it was pretty early in my day, and I didn't really have as many good shots as I wanted, but I had this one fantastic shot. It took me 20 hours to clone out everybody else in the park, and it was just them, right? And it was like literally like it was like pixel perfect. Every single little dot was replaced with a little bit of green. It took 20 hours, but the end result was like, even though the rest of my shots I felt were kind of crap, I mean, that made the day. That was the saving grace. So, is there anything else that makes you all excited in photography today?
Well, it's certainly not wedding photography. I've done a little bit of that, and while I quite enjoy taking pictures of people who are having this happy occasion, the other sort of responsibilities and pressures of, being the photographer on such an important date, not something that that's not a situation I thrive in. So I really like to do just landscape photography. I like to get up early in the morning and go up for the sunrise or the sunset and find a good place and just try to take a nice, pleasing picture of nature or San Francisco or Yosemite or something. I used to do quite a bit of that, and then kids started getting a little older, and now it's pretty hard to get out of the house on those times when the pictures might be good. So I haven't done that for quite a while.
Yeah, looking at your timelines, you've kind of slowed down a little bit, since 2017, and life happens. What are you doing that's keeping you super busy these days, other than your kids, I'm sure?
Yeah, well, that's the main thing. In the end of 2016, my wife changed jobs, and she's the breadwinner in our household. And so my schedule has to accommodate what she's doing. And she started traveling a lot more, which made it really hard for me to travel. And I was hoping in 2017, as that season started off, that I was going to get to a fair number of races. Picked up my credential and my vest at the start of the year and only went to one race. Just made it to Circuit Americas. And right after that, things pretty much snowballed here at home. And my wife started traveling a lot. And, one of us has to be here. I have two girls, and one of them is a teenager. So that's sort of the defining characteristic of my life now, is having a teenage daughter. But I also have a fourth grader, and neither of them goes to school here in the neighborhood. Neither of them walks to school. They each have to get to school and then get home, and they're each of them is an athlete, and so they have practice. So there's a lot of shuttling around. I'm sort of a two-client Lyft driver these days.
Nice.
I have about 4 hours at my desk. I'm still selling pictures. I'm still in touch with my MotoGP colleagues via WhatsApp, and I'm still doing a little bit of stuff each month on Patreon. I have some people who've stuck with me, for years. I really appreciate them, and so I do content for that each month. So I'm still keeping in touch. I just paid my insurance for the year, so I'm ready to travel if the opportunity comes up, but it has to be, the way things are now, it'd have to be a pretty good offer to get me to leave my home. I mean, that's the virus aside, if things here were normal, it'd have to be a pretty compelling situation.
Yeah, I mean, with COVID-19 and nobody traveling, what else are you doing to keep you and your family and your girls sane and around the house? I mean, it must be driving them nuts to be doing all this online learning because no one's actually doing any learning from everything I've heard and seen.
Well, I think we're doing a little bit of learning. We're certainly learning how to use the computer. Both girls have gotten pretty adept at that.
Right.
My fourth grader gets her email with her Zoom link and the code, and she has a calendar reminder, and she's not late for class, and she sits there. I hear her in there interacting with the other kids and the teacher, and they've moved to an online platform for all the schoolwork. So she has a little schedule. My wife's a project manager, so she did a Google Sheet where each of us has our time planned out during
Awesome.
the day, what we're supposed to be doing. And girls have academic time, and then they have flex time. And so, we've got the parental controls on all our Apple devices going so that they can have so much Netflix and so much of this and so much of that during the day. And we have a young golden retriever, so he's getting a lot more attention and training now during that flex time period. And
How old is the golden retriever?
he's a little over 2, just turned 2 in March.
Okay.
But
So
he's
super
still,
high energy.
yeah, super. He's still emotionally, still like about 4 months old.
Oh, yeah. I think they genuinely are the best type of dogs. I don't have a dog now, but I had two before. I've never had a retriever. But I think they're just amazing dogs to have.
Well, he's for sale if you're interested.
No, I'm good. Yeah,
I keep offering him, and no one wants him. Even people who think golden retrievers are great. I'm just
right.
kidding. He's not really for sale,
Yeah,
but he
no,
is.
that's good. So, I mean, that's a good excuse though for you to get out and at least do that walk with the dog, right?
Yeah, we get out sort of in the neighborhood.
Mm.
Today was a big day. I went to Costco for my in-laws. They sent a list, and I went out to Costco and stood in line for 20 minutes to get into the Costco, and then went to all sorts of departments in Costco that I've never been before because they asked for things that we never get. I didn't even know Costco had them. So that's kind of a mini adventure for me, getting out of the house and delivering that stuff to them.
Yeah. Are you a big fan of shopping online and having groceries delivered to you?
I'm a big fan of shopping online because I really don't like shopping at all. So if I can just look on the computer and click and have it brought to me, that's ideal. But my wife does like to go shop for groceries and stuff. So she's the one who does that every 2 weeks. So we have to decide what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks. And then she goes and makes some massive shopping, takes the teenager with her, and then we're set for the next 2 weeks.
I'm telling you, it's like running a football play when I go shopping now, right? Like you pre-plan, you got to put on the mask because you want to make sure you don't give it to anybody else, and just in case you have it.
Yeah.
You got the goggles on just because if somebody coughs on you, the eye sockets are another way for the virus to get in. You got the hoodie, you got everything on, and then you have that shopping list, and you kind of like pre-think, okay, I know where every item is because I've been to this grocery store 1,000 times before, and I was like, I'm gonna hit this aisle, this aisle, this aisle, and get out, right? And I swear, it feels like a football play for sure.
Why don't you try shopping for your in-laws? They'll bring you to parts of the store you've never been to before.
Well, I have a pretty large extended family, and one of the good things is we're all tech savvy, as most people are these days. So we do buy everything online. What we found to be beneficial as a little tip and trick is we just ask who else is shopping, who else has an order queued up, right? And so if they have an order already kind of like waiting, you can add to that order very, very quickly because there usually is a cutoff time. And so we've been very, very fortunate in being able to buy the things we've needed to buy. And it hasn't been a big issue for us yet. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, do you think this is going to last any longer than it already has?
I'm not an authority on this. Sorry.
No, neither am I. So if we get back to photography for a second, you still sound like you're pretty passionate about it. Let me ask you this kind of odd little question. What is the most unwieldy piece of kit that you own that you just love to use, but you know it's just a giant pain in the butt to use?
Well, I don't know. The first thing that pops in my head is probably the 500 millimeter lens because it's big and bulky, and I do love it. It's just a wonderful piece of photo gear. Many of my favorite pictures were made with that lens, but I think probably a better answer would be my variable density, neutral density filter, because I really love that. It allows me to slow the shutter down a lot and use slow shutter speeds with a large aperture so that I avoid using a really small aperture, which leads to a lot of dust spots on the picture. So that saves me a lot of time in Photoshop removing those things. But it's kind of a pain in the neck to put on and then take off. So I tend to sort of plan when I'm going to use that. I try to put it on before I go out into pit lane or on track so I can make sure everything's clean. It's kind of a pain in the neck to use. That's why I mean unwieldy, because I have to reach around into the hood and adjust the dial to get the right amount of light blocking on it. But for all those inconvenient elements, it's just fantastic piece of gear to allow you to shoot at really slow shutter speeds, which I really like to do, and not have a ton of dust spots on the pictures to remove later.
Is there a favorite track, favorite corner that you'd like to shoot at, and what's the worst, other than the Porta Johns or the Porta Potty, as we call them in Canada?
The best for sure is Phillip Island. I've said that for years and years. The first time I went there when Casey was retiring, because I make sure that I saw him at Phillip Island. Just fell in love with that place. It's the best racetrack in the world as far as I'm concerned. It's not only great for the racing, but for photography, it's fantastic because the whole circuit is interesting. You don't have to deal with fences. You have these beautiful backgrounds of the ocean or big green glass or large crowds. And I feel like you could just live the rest of your life there and keep finding interesting pictures, interesting perspectives of the track, because you can shoot almost literally anywhere around the circuit, inside or outside. So that's definitely my favorite circuit to go to. The worst, sort of probably a toss-up between Indianapolis and Silverstone, just for photography. Like I love going to the British Grand Prix. I get to see my British friends, and I like being in England and going to the pub after a long, hard day at the track. I really like that part, but Silverstone as a circuit for photography is one of my least favorites. And it probably took over once Indianapolis went off the
circuit. Yeah. Do you have a favorite traveling story when you went to Phillip Island? And obviously, it sounds like a place that you love going to, but is there a favorite moment or anything like that made you go, dang, I really like coming here?
Well, I mean, the favorite moment was probably just the first year that I was there, going out to turn 3 and seeing Casey go through that turn full throttle. I mean, standing on the track, you could tell as they went by that he was just on another level there, against the best, the other best motorcycle riders in the world. So that was one of those moments trackside that really just gave me chills as a racing fan, as a motorcycle fan, and as someone who admires seeing people do something better than anyone else does it.
Yeah, he was certainly special. I mean, Ducati hasn't really reached a peak that he's brought, since. I mean, there's been guys that are great on the bike, but it just hasn't been developed to the point where he can just rail that thing around. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting to me to think as much success as they've had since Gigi Dall'Igna took over, and turned the program around and got rid of the elements that made that bike unrideable for other very talented riders. What if Casey were still around and was on the bike that Dovizioso is on now? I think it would be a different story.
for sure. And I know. I mean, who's to say, right? I mean, if I might have retired in his shoes as well. I mean, you don't have to do it forever.
Well, he had his reasons, but boy, I really, as a fan, I really regret that he left when he did, because I would have loved to see him race Marc Marquez.
Yeah, true.
I would love to have more years of him riding in MotoGP. I worked with him quite a bit to sign pictures, and that was a great experience every time. So I wish he'd stayed around from a business perspective. From a personal perspective, getting together with him was always enjoyable. But just as a fan of MotoGP motorcycle racing, I really wish that he had stuck around for another couple of years and raced Marc Marquez.
Yeah. When I first started this podcast with Dan actually name dropped a couple of guys. I'm not going to name them today, but dropped a couple of names where I'm like, man, they're active and I know them. And he's like, do you want to interview them? And I'm like, no, I'd be too nervous. How do you keep from being such a huge fan? How do you keep from fanboying out? Like, how do you keep from going, oh my God, it's, Rossi, it's whomever. Like, how do you keep in check? Or can you, or do you?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for not being too nervous to interview me. I'm glad to be here.
I am super nervous, by the way. You just look at the text after, I'll show you.
Second, I think that what kept me from being, what you're talking about is that getting together with those guys at first was always a business thing, and I took that very seriously. So I was really focused on trying to have my act together when I was meeting with a writer to sign pictures. So the first time that I did that was with Kenny Roberts Sr., and though I drove away with signed pictures, that couple of hours that I was there at the ranch with Kenny were the things didn't go as smoothly as they did after I'd been doing it for a couple of years. So each time I met with a writer, I took notes afterwards, and I developed a checklist of what I was going to bring, what order I was going to do things. Did I need a helper? Were there so many pictures I needed to find someone to help me do one part or another? And so I really tried to focus on, being professional and courteous, and someone that the writer and the writer's manager, whoever, girlfriend, whoever was there at the time would want to work with again. And so I think since my focus was on that, I was a little less starstruck than maybe I would have been if, it wasn't under those conditions that I was meeting with these guys whom I admired so much.
Yeah, I like how you approach it by being in a very business-like manner where you had, a checklist of things that you needed to do. I think that's smart. I had a similar process again when I was in wedding photography, where I had a wish list of shots I wanted to get. Whether I get them or not, that's another matter. But at least I knew in the back of my hand which 20, 30 shots that I'm like, I gotta do this, and this, and they pan out great. If they don't pan out, at least I tried. So that's great. So this is the first time I met you. It sounds like you're one of those guys that are kind of like me, who are very detailed oriented and who are like, I need these 8 things documented and I'm going to do them in order. You've traveled a bunch. What is by far, other than Phillip Island for photography, what is your favorite place to travel to? And then the second part of that question, sorry, is how do you pack? Do you pack light, or you throw everything and hopefully I can get through?
Well, I'll do the second part first. For packing for a motorcycle race is very similar to meeting with a writer to have them sign pictures. I have a packing list on my desktop and on my laptop. So when I'm leaving the hotel, I make sure that I don't leave anything under the bed or in a drawer or something. And it's pretty detailed. So I have one for all my photo gear down to individual items. And I start at the top. And as I put things in the bag, I delete them from the list. And then make sure not to take anything out. And that way, that list was ever evolving as long as I was traveling. I was still making changes to it in 2016, sorry. just to make sure that, well, I'm not going to bring this anymore, so I'm going to take that off the list. I just don't use that anymore. Like I stopped bringing battery chargers. At first I had to, I use Nikon bodies, and the bodies use different battery types. So I had to bring 2 battery chargers, and the things are kind of bulky. And at one point I realized that I make it through a weekend because I don't take 5,000 or 6,000 pictures on the weekend. I try to limit myself to 2,000 or 3,000. I can get through a weekend with a battery and a spare for each body. So I bring 2 fully charged batteries for each body, and then that's it. I stopped bringing the battery chargers, so I took them off the list. I just don't bring those anymore.
You are more brave than I am, by the way.
Well, the other thing is, after I'd been there for a couple of years, I'm sitting in the media center surrounded by colleagues and friends and people. I feel comfortable enough if I got low, the battery that I'd used Friday and half of Saturday, I could go over to one of the other Nikon guys and say, hey, can I throw this in your charger for an hour? And
yeah,
it'd be fine.
Yeah.
I just have to remember to go get the battery.
Yeah.
But so I had that toward the end of my time in MotoGP, things were much different from how I started off, right? When I first got there and I was a nobody in the media center, I didn't know anyone I could ask for that kind of help. So I brought everything that I needed. But at each year I tried to streamline and bring less and less stuff. I stopped bringing some lenses that I used to bring because I just didn't use them that often. I didn't use them enough to warrant packing them and lugging them and risking them getting lost or damaged. So I got pretty streamlined by 2016 for sure.
And then your favorite place to go to? Because I think it was your website that I saw, or where you had some amazing, travel style photography. It looked like it was you and your family. What is your place to go?
Well, if a wife says, let's, get away for a little while, she's really adventurous. So she likes to go to places like Thailand and, far, long trips with the kids, get there and have it be exotic. And I love it once we're there, but I've spent so much time on airplanes and in airports, it's really hard to get me to go on a long trip now. So if she says, hey, let's get away, I say, let's go to Hawaii. I really like to go to Hawaii. So we go there. It's pretty short from California. It's only 5 hours to get there from California. And once we're there, we just unplug and we're at the beach all day. And there's no, there's no rickety old house to work on, and there's no work to do. I just like to hang out and be in a beautiful place and not have anything to do. Whereas she likes to, see things and have a big list of this. We're going to do all this. And we're going to go these different places, and I like to just not have anything to do.
I think you and I are very, very similar in that regard. Now, where in Hawaii should I go? Now, I've only been to Honolulu. That was about 10 years ago. And Honolulu, while it was amazing, it was great, and the weather was beautiful, it just felt like a really nice version of any American city, right? So where is the spot? What's the move?
Well, we, at the risk of making it sound like we go all the time, which we don't, we used to go to Kauai, and we really liked that because it was not really developed very much. And we had a little part of the island where we had a little place that we would rent. And, it had some restaurants, and they put in a small grocery store so we could get the basics of what we needed and still feel like we were in a remote tropical place with beautiful beaches. And then for one of my birthdays, she said, what do you want to do? And I said, for years, I have wanted to see big surf on the North Shore of Hawaii. So my birthday's in March. The big waves are usually done by then. So we said, let's schedule your birthday trip for January, and we'll go to the North Shore and stay up around Bonsai Pipeline or Sunset or someplace and hope that we have big waves. And so I brought all my camera gear, and it worked out really well because they had a big swell come in. They thought they were going to have the Eddie Akai tournament there. I don't know if you know about that, but it's a big wave tournament that only happens if the conditions are big enough.
Okay.
To have the Eddie, and the big wave surfers are on call in the winter all around the world. to wait to see if the eddy's going to happen. And if the weather looks like it's going to happen, then the organizers of the tournament get on the horn and they say, okay, we're looking for 2 weeks from now, get ready. And so all these surfers, wherever they are, make their reservations and get ready to go if the word comes out that they're going to have it. And they were going to have it, and then at the last minute they said, oh no, it's not quite big enough. But it was still really big waves at Waikiki and Pipeline and stuff. So that was great to see that. So we like to go to North Shore. It's still, not super developed. So it's nice to go to. And then another possibility where we've gone the last couple times is the Big Island. I connected with a photographer who shoots lava flows when the volcano is active. He makes fantastic pictures of that because he lives there. He's grown up on that island. And so we went to the Big Island, and it's very big and lots of really remote areas, but lots of cool stuff to see. And seeing the volcanoes, if it's active, is pretty remarkable. You can go way up to the top of the island, which is really high elevation. He took me up there, and hard to breathe. The elevation's so high. I don't want to say a number because I'm going to get it wrong, but high.
Did you get it? Sorry, go on.
That's just another possibility if you're interested in seeing interesting things in Hawaii. Kona,
yeah.
If you're a coffee fan, you can get Kona coffee, right? Go a lot of coffee plantations are there, so you go visit them and eat the cherries right off the tree, and then you get the ones that they've roasted there. So it's a good place for coffee buffs too.
Yeah, I'm more of a tea guy. Like I'll drink coffee, but I think the reason why I developed a liking for tea is where I work today, right? I also have a full-time job, and I don't want to be the guy stuck making the coffee. So a tea bag is a lot easier. So that's kind of become my drink of choice. And I think it's just really out of laziness more than anything else. Because I find myself, I do drink a lot of coffee on the weekends at home, right? I have an AeroPress. I don't know if you know what that is. It's a little push button, not push button. It's like put the coffee in, you push it down really hard, and the coffee comes out. It's kind of like a pressurized drip coffee. I guess not really drip because it comes down in about 30 seconds. Anyways, it supposedly was really good. Yeah, I like it. But again, I'm not a big enough connoisseur to really have a comment or, to say whether it's great or not. You mentioned that you don't like traveling as much long distance because you've done it so much in your life. We all gripe and complain about, airplane food. What is the absolute worst airplane food you've had?
Well, so being based in California, I flew a lot of miles on United and United Partners of the Star Alliance. And one of the greatest days of my life was the day that I broke up with United. In fact, whenever we do go on a trip, if we're not on United, I feel like that's a win thing.
Yeah.
So I have had some really pretty appalling food on United. In fact, when you fly other partners, I would say that almost everybody did a better job than United did. Yeah.
Thailand. I've also been to Thailand. I went to this was a while ago. I went to a place called Krabi or Krabi, right?
Yeah.
Where did you go in Thailand, and what do you love about Thailand other than everything?
So that's sort of typical of my wife. She decided it would be good to get the girls a real international experience. So she rented a house, basically. It was in a little complex, but it was a house in a town about 2 hours south of Bangkok, 2-hour drive south of Bangkok.
Okay.
And she rented for 2 months. And we went and moved in, and I scheduled it so that I could do the flyaway races. So that was my first opportunity to go to Motegi. It was the first time I went to Sepang, because they were, it's easier to get there from Thailand than from California was the idea. So I spent a little over a month there, I guess, while they were there for 2 months. Because I went early to Japan and visited a little bit before the race and stayed a little bit after. So what I loved about Thailand mainly was the food. I don't think I'm really a huge food buff,
Mm.
but boy, I did like to eat in Thailand. I thought I had Thai food. When I got there and they started serving me real Thai food, I realized that I'd never had it before. So that I think that was it. But it was a really nice place to visit. The people there were lovely.
Yeah.
Driving was crazy and really something that we had to adapt to. But the people were very pleasant, very nice. It was very hot there, but we were on the water, so we spent a lot of time, at the beach and eating, and it was kind of like Hawaii in a lot of ways,
Mm.
a lot farther away. And I got to go to some motorcycle races while we were there too. So
That's awesome.
yeah, I'd
Yeah.
go back there if it weren't so far. That's
Right.
the only thing that makes me sort of dread the idea of going back to Thailand.
Yeah. I don't even remember how long or how many hours it took me, because from Toronto, I imagine I have to fly to like Hong Kong, Japan, Shanghai, something like that. And then from there, take a plane over to Thailand. So it must have been a good 20, 21 hours. Yeah, it's definitely not as close as Hawaii. Did you get a chance to rent a scooter or anything like that, and go for a boot or a bike or anything?
We didn't do that in Thailand. We had my wife's uncle lives there. He retired there from San Francisco, and so he had a car that we borrowed. So we had a car when we were there.
Okay.
Had a lot of close calls with a lot of scooters with like whole families and pets on them, but we never actually rode scooters there.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like very stereotype when you say, hey, you know what? They literally put a family of five on a little scooter. And yet, you drive by and it's like mom's in the front, like grandma's driving, mom's holding two kids, and then they got the fifth kid standing in front on the little floorboard, right? Like
Yeah.
and that's a thing. To them, it's no biggie. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you kind of a funny, story. Maybe not so funny, but anyways, my friends and I, we had friends from every nationality. We had a Caucasian dude, and we all rented bikes, right? White guy, right? We all rented bikes. It was all good. And one thing you probably know this is in Thailand, it is required that you wear a helmet, okay, when you're a scooter. However, if you're local, no one's gonna stop you.
Mm.
So me being an Asian dude, and I was pretty tanned at the time, nobody gave me second thoughts. In fact, I think I said Sawadee Cop so well that people thought I was Thai and was just go right busted into going, and I'm like, sorry, English, I'm Chinese, right? So that's good. But the point is, the poor dude. I mean, because he was white, and it was very obvious that he wasn't from Thailand, they gave him a ticket. He was very, very pissed off. Like, poor guy, right?
Yeah.
So speaking of gear, um, is this eternal debate of how much gear do you need? How much gear makes the photographer, right? I still have friends today who are semi-pro, who are, very, very enthusiastic amateurs who are still spending thousands and thousands of dollars getting the latest kit, getting the latest gear, saying, hey, you know what? Everybody's doing Sony now, so we're just dumping all our Canon and Nikon and going full Sony. And I go, how much is that transition? They're like, oh, it's 10 G's. And I'm like, why don't you spend 10 G's and actually like learn to shoot better? Fly to somewhere exotic and get some good shots. Like, you know what I mean? So what is that? What do you think? Do you have a take on this?
Well, I pretty much stopped buying gear when I felt like there's nothing that I'm going to buy now that is going to make more saleable pictures.
Mm.
Because when you're doing something as a hobby, right, even if you are very amateur, the gear is part of the fun of it, right? Spending money on cool stuff is part of the pleasure that you get if you have the means to do that.
Right.
So that's fine. When you're traveling to races and you have to sell enough pictures to cover your expenses and then try to make some profit on top of that because you're operating a business, then things like which gear you're going to get, that's a utterly different question. That becomes, is the new body going to make more money? Is it going to allow me to take pictures that will sell better? Am I going to sell more pictures? Because if the camera body is $5,000, I've got to sell a lot of pictures for that body to pay for itself and then start making money on top of that, right? So I think the main thing about that is, what are you doing it? Why are you buying the gear? You're buying it to help your business, or you're buying it for the pleasure of having it. And if it's the latter, then power to you.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah. I want to change the questions a little bit here. I just thought of something. With COVID-19, we're probably not going to have a MotoGP race or season. I have a feeling we're not going to get a full season, if at all, season. And let me come out straight up to tell you that I'm a casual fan, right? I'm not a guy that can tell you stats. I can name maybe 3 guys, okay? And Rossi's one of them, okay? Now, I'm a moto guy. Rossi's certainly not a spring chicken. Do you think he's going to be able to compete next year because you're going to skip a year of racing? I mean, 1 year older. But also that gives him a chance to rest his body and blah, blah, blah. Do you think he can still be competitive in 2021? Or does that even matter?
Well, you're asking me to see the future again. I think if anybody at that age could possibly do it, it would be him. I'll say that. Having a year off, is it going to help him? I don't know if it's going to help him as much as it would help someone who's banged up from crashing a lot, because he doesn't crash very much. My personal feeling at my time of life, I'm older than he is, I think probably it would be better if he were racing this year. I don't know if a season off is going to help him that much. If it's going to, if the wear and tear is going to help him, like, will he be better off next season for not having raced this season? I don't know. I'm sure he's still training avidly and staying fit and keeping his skills up as best he can, given that he can't ride a MotoGP bike. And maybe he has so much experience that he'll come back into next season in better shape than, the guys who don't have as long a career, as many thousands of hours of muscle memory built up as he does. I don't know. But I would have to say that if anybody could do it, it would be him.
It would be him. Yeah, no, for sure. Are they allowed to still develop the bike even though there's potentially no racing this year? Like, are there rules for that?
Testing going on. I'm still in touch with the English-speaking journalists and photographers, and I haven't heard anything about any testing going on. So I think all the bikes are quiet in terms of any official work. Now, whether any of the teams are, off at the track, it seems like it would be almost impossible to have the MotoGP riders involved in that without it showing up on social media.
Now, speaking of MotoGP, and if we're going along that vein, why isn't it more popular in America? Like, I mean, all our friends watch it, okay? But, I mean, you would think, and without sounding like an old man, you would think that, motorcycle racing is made for the millennials, right? It's only 22 to 24 laps, 25 laps max. So it's a pretty quick, short amount of time. It's done within an hour, right? The speed, the personality, the attraction. You would think that it would be like one of the most popular sports in America, right? It's really meant for that TV audience. But why isn't, that mass adoption? Or mass interest, I guess.
Well, I think that sports are interesting. Spectators care about the people involved in them. Okay? Even something like motorcycle racing, which seems like it's pretty exciting. If you don't care about who wins, then motorcycles going around the track, right? So popular in the United States I think that's because fans of sports here have catch their imagination more, and personalities that catch their imagination more than motorcycle racing. The NFL is hugely popular. I think that takes up most sports fans in the United States, but we also have the NBA, baseball. There's hockey like that. I'm a huge hockey fan. That's all I watch besides motorcycle racing. I don't watch anything else.
Wow. Okay.
But I think those personalities are more accessible to fans than even writers. Most of the races are outside the United States. I think it still has a just a feeling of something that happens elsewhere in the world, and we have really successful, well-marketed here that you can watch for free on TV. You can go to the games, understand being interviewed, most of them. I don't know. That's my feeling about it.
Yeah, it's just too many accessible sports, and maybe because there's no real American, strong rider at all nowadays, right? So I wonder if that has a, play in as well. It's just people kind of.
Well, yeah, it probably does. When we had, Ben Spies and Nicky Hayden and Colin Edwards, I mean, they were, accessible personalities. Everyone liked Nicky.
Mm-hmm.
Colin was very entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Ben was a great guy, even though he is very mild-mannered and maybe not someone to, really got a lot of fans excited about what he did. But, now that we don't have anyone in the premier class and haven't for years, that certainly doesn't help things.
Yeah, I got to say Nicky Hayden is probably my favorite rider. Again, I'm not a stats kind of guy, so I didn't follow his career closely, but he's by far my favorite rider. I was actually going to buy his Tissot watch, right? But then I realized, what am I going to do with the $600 watch? Like I don't need that in my life. I can't really afford to spend $600 on a watch, so I didn't buy it. But if I was going to buy a watch, it was definitely would have been his for sure. So when I heard, when we all found out that he had passed, I mean, that was super, super, super sad. And I'm assuming the picture above your head behind you is of Nicky Hayden.
Yeah, one of them is. That's one that he signed for me on one of the times that I visited him to sign pictures for his fans. He was the writer that I worked with the most, and the one I got to know the best. And yeah, that was really a sad conclusion to his story for sure.
Yeah, is there a little known, not embarrassing story of Nicky that you could share with me? I mean, honestly, he's my favorite.
Well, a short one that I think I can share. The family had a house. Probably still does have the house in Orange, the city of Orange, in the Los Angeles area, in Orange County. And he signed pictures for me at races sometimes, but we always did a signing at the sort of the end of the summer or the end of the winter before we got going again, because he would go there to train because the weather in Southern California was good. So I would take all the orders, put the pictures in the car, and drive from the Bay Area down to Orange and meet him at his house. And we signed pictures in the garage. I was there for 45 minutes or so, and then I'd pack everything up and come home and send them out to the customers. But one day I arrived in my wife's car she always has a nicer car than I do, at Nicky's house, and there was a Lamborghini in the driveway.
Wow. And
so I unpacked stuff and knocked on the door, and he let me in. I said, "Hey, did you get a new car?" He said, "No, that's just, he was at Ducati. It was when he was still at Ducati, and I guess Audi owned Ducati, and Audi also owned Lamborghini. So
right.
there was all this, sort of cross-pollination of these companies. So the Orange County Lamborghini dealer, when Nicky was in town, would sometimes say, "Hey, you want to borrow a car to drive around?" So he had gone and taken it, or they'd deliver it to his house. And I said, "Man, is it fun to drive?" He said, "Well, I don't really drive it that much." So I thought that's really Nicky. You have a Lamborghini to use, drive wherever you want, and like, not really my style, man.
Yeah, it's not really that fast, and I can't really drift it as much as I'd want. Did you ever get to see him do his flat track stuff?
Yeah, the year that he rode at the Indy Mile, I was there and got a couple pictures of him on the Ducati at the mile. Yeah, I was always hoping, actually, that he would retire from road racing in time to go back to flat track and win the Grand Slam, because he was like the only guy who had a chance to do it. So,
yeah. Is flat track very popular these days? I personally don't follow it.
Well, I think the last couple of years it's been growing in popularity. And certainly, American Flat Track has tried to do it, to try to grow it, and they've got it on NBC Sports sometimes on TV. And I think they were gaining momentum until, all the events they've canceled all their events too. But it's still, I think, something that's really has appeal to a certain slice of the motorcycle crowd. And to me, when I stopped traveling for MotoGP, or it became apparent that I wasn't going to be able to do that, I tried really hard to get involved in flat track racing because I really like it. And did some work for Dainese at a couple of races. And while I was there, I was, I knew a couple of the people who worked for American Flat Track, and was really trying to find a spot there, because the prospect of traveling just in the United States to flat track racing seemed a lot more doable than continuing to do MotoGP. So I thought that might be a good compromise for me. But that didn't work out, and the races that I went to were all very enjoyable to watch and to be and talk about. A good thing for millennials. It's just a one-day thing. They start in the morning, they do all the qualifying, and then they have the main events for the different classes at the end of the day, and it's done. So you can go and get there to the fairground and see the whole story in one day, and it's pretty affordable to go to, and the events just are going almost constantly because the heats are short, and they start off with all these riders to get down to the main event. And so I think it's a really good spectator sport for motorcycle fans. But it being a flat track, being a dirt track event, I don't know, it just seems like it has a very specific appeal to people who, like the motorcycles, that type of motorcycle. And I don't remember seeing a lot of like road racing fans there, really. So I think getting on TV is a good step for them, and it's a drag, like for them, for like everybody else, that they lost their momentum this year and aren't going to have a season. But I'm hopeful that they can get going again, and you should try watching it. Or try going to a race. I don't know what the closest one to you up in there in Toronto, but they're in the United States. For people watching in the United States, there are events all around the country. They're not all back in the Midwest.
Right.
There are a couple in California. So you just look on the calendar. I think there are 18 or 19 events, and one day to go to, and it's affordable to go to, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I can't imagine though that I think for events like this, as a photographer, you couldn't afford to change bodies. I mean, you couldn't afford to change lenses, right? Because so much dust would get in there as soon as you try to take it off. You'd have to go with multiple bodies to shoot anything.
Yeah, but you can shoot the whole day with a wide-angle lens and my 70 to 200. I always had that on a body. I tried for a while. I carried 3 bodies, and that got to be too complicated. I went to 2 bodies, and one would go from a wide angle to the 500 and back and forth as needed, and one body always had the 70-200 because it was so versatile. And probably 70% of my pictures were taken with the 70-200 lens, and you can do a whole day of flat track with a wide angle and the 70-200. Don't need it bigger than that. So
my 70-200 was also my go-to camera, even for wedding photography. I like candid shots. I hate the staged stuff where you're like, okay, guys, get your family to stand over here, wait for the backdrop to happen, wait for the light to be perfect. Okay, give it 5 minutes. I hated that kind of stuff. I'm a very much like, okay, guys, just be normal. Trust me, believe me, I will get amazing shots of you between the times you'll be posing. So usually I'll have my second be actually the primary photographer, where he or she was directing, crowd control and stand here, stand there. And meanwhile, I stood further away, and I got more natural looking shots, which I much prefer. In terms of, I think we talked about photography enough. In terms of passion projects, instead of what you want to get off the ground next, Is there anything that's really getting you excited lately, other than the Patreon stuff, which I think is pretty cool?
No, not really. With the kids home, with all of us here around the clock, I'm really just taking it one day at a time, just trying to get up in the morning and get everybody on their calls, get the schoolwork done, take a little break. I've been spending a lot of time in the garage. The garage is tidier than it's been for years. That's when I kind of get a little bit too much of all the people. I go out there and they don't really bother me when I'm out there. So that's kind of my escape from my problems area. So it's looking pretty good out in the garage, I have to say. Pretty tight.
Yeah. I elected to build another flower box this year in the backyard. So all of a sudden I'll have at least something to do for one day where I don't have to be in the house. I don't have to hear people scream, and I can be by myself. So I'm kind of stoked about that, to be honest.
Yeah, little projects like that are fun. It's nice to have time to do those and have a kind of a motivation to do them as a kind of escape from what's going on in the rest of the house.
Yeah, because it's crazy. It's crazy nowadays and inside. I had a question, and now all of a sudden it escaped me. In regards to, you said that I remember you said that your wife has a nicer car than you. What do you drive? Do you have a dream car or dream bike that you're never gonna buy, even though you're like, dang it. Well, even with the money. Even we had them. Yeah.
My main vehicle is a Toyota Tacoma pickup truck,
Nice.
which I plan to have forever. I love that car. It's got 180,000 miles on it. Fires right up. It's just super dependable, and it's not doesn't have any bells and whistles on it. It's just a good solid car that I can bring. I have an Aprilia 250 scooter that is all I ride on the street. I just do little errands on that. But I really enjoy riding dirt bikes. I don't have my own dirt bike at the moment, so if I get to go, it's on a friend. My brother-in-law has a couple, so I'll bring the truck over there and we'll put the dirt bikes, and that's a nice contribution that I can make to Dirt Bike Day, is that I do the transportation of the bikes and the ramp and all that stuff, so the truck's great for that. We also have my wife has her car, and then we have a little electric car, a Nissan Leaf, which honestly is one of the favorite cars I've ever had. It's a fantastic little car. It weighs almost nothing. All the weight is in the battery, really low. It's super quick, up to 30 miles an hour, and it's really, really fun to drive and guilt-free. No pollution or very little pollution. So it's funny to look at. It's not much to look at, but it's really fun to drive. In terms of my dream car that I'll never have, I think that would probably, like, if I could get any car, it would be that Nissan GTR.
Oh yeah,
what I would pick. One year I did a couple of British Superbike rounds over the years, and at Cadwell Park one year, I was offered a ride around the track with the guy who drives the safety car, and it was at that time they were using a Nissan GTR, and that was a memorable experience. That track around Cadwell Park and the safety car, and the guy who was driving, Charlie, said, this car it doesn't really have that much done to it. It has slick tires and a little bit of suspension work, but that's it. It's really not that much different from the car that you would buy on the street. Wow. And I thought, well, that would be a lot of fun to have this car.
Yeah. What do you think? What's your take on the Cybertruck? I mean, now that you drive an EV, is that something you'd want? Could that replace the Tacoma?
Electric truck. Would love it. The only thing I don't like about the Tacoma is that it's, I do a lot of little trips, getting the girls to school, just little odds and ends. And if I'm doing something that requires a truck, it's fine. But things that I would rather be in the Leaf for, I don't like, getting 20 miles a gallon in the truck for these little around the town projects. So I would love it if the truck were electric and had a proper range that we could, take it up to Tahoe, or that I could just drive it around on my little errands and have it be an electric car. Would I want the Tesla electric truck? I don't think I'm a bold enough personality to drive that car. It's a little too much attention grabbing for my style. But if they make one that looks more like a Toyota Tacoma, for example, but that was electric, then yeah, I'd be right on board. But I think that's about the only thing that I would consider getting rid of the Tacoma for.
Have you seen the Rivian? I can't remember if there's a name. There's a company called Rivian. They're gonna make an electric truck. They're gonna say it's better than the Tesla, and it's a more conventional truck style. So we'll see. I actually put an order down. But anybody can put an order down for a Cybertruck, and it's $100, right? There's no sweat, it's no biggie. So I did put an order down. We'll see what happens in a couple of years. Yeah, who knows? I mean, I like the idea of the Cybertruck. My biggest concern is after the demo. I don't know if you saw the demo that Elon Musk, right? My worry is you're gonna get punks walking around going, "Oh my gosh, that's a Cybertruck. I heard it's indestructible," and go and boot it, right? And I'm sure somebody's gonna take a bat to it one time or throw a rock, and they're gonna do something to the car, right? I mean, it's not really indestructible, and that's my only fear of parking it.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we'll see.
Too much of an attention getter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I hated the truck. I thought it was the silliest thing ever when I first saw it, but it quickly grew on me. Once I saw it actually, videos of it, on the street, I'm like, oh, dang, that looks pretty good. Yeah. Well, Scott, thanks so much for your time.
Talk to you. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, and if there's anything else you'd want to talk about, I'd love to have you back.
Okay, sounds good. I'll try to think of something.
All right, great. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Yep.